Grab your coffee, get jacked up. It's time for another episode of The Block Talk, welcoming good friend and leader of our Little Rock Regional Chamber here, Mr. J. Chessir.
Hi, Jamie. It's great to be back.
It is great to have you back. And I'm fortunate that we have kind of a relationship over the years, business. We also are buddies, I think, right?
Absolutely.
So it's always easy to talk to you and catch up on what's going on in Little Rock. So I do want to start out with these past few years have been crazy busy for our city. So much has changed. Do you have a highlight, maybe one or two things that have happened over the past, it's been 3 years since I've sat with you here, that has just blown your mind or just stand out to you as something that you didn't see coming, changed everything?
You know, it's going to be a surprise when I answer that. I often get asked what your favorite project is. And of course, they're kind of like children. You love them all. You don't like them all at the same time. But in the over $6 billion worth of projects, over 30,000 jobs, over $1 billion in new payroll, my most favorite moment was standing at Mills High School. And we're unveiling the brand new lexicon welding bay as part of the Academies of Central Arkansas through the advanced manufacturing pathway. And the instructor is standing there, and there were 4 young gentlemen, obviously in high school, that were in the crowd. And he looked at the 4, and I was standing next to him, and he said, tell this man why you're coming to school. And they looked at him and went, well, because of this. And he said, last year and the year before, we couldn't ever get these 4 gentlemen to come to school. He said, but because they want in that welding bay and they want to learn and they want to make money, obviously, as they graduate, and whether they own their own welding company, whatever it may be, that is changing those 4 lives. And I thought, we've done some amazing things, and it takes a team, and we're a village, and all those things that you have to be successful. But to be standing there looking at 4 young men who were on the wrong path that are now on the right path because somebody gave them an opportunity and something that they really enjoy and something that gives them a framework from which to learn by, that changes everything.
Mm-hmm. People always say money matters, but money matters more when it matters, I guess. That wasn't as good of a catchphrase as I wanted it to be, but I get it because my son, just like on a personal note, wants to go to welding school. And it is his main motivation in graduating high school that I want to go to welding school. But I guarantee you he'd rather sleep till noon. So
it's interesting. We oftentimes categorize young people in different ways in different places that without asking them oftentimes as well. And I have a friend who has a son that graduated from Pulaski Academy that you would fully expect he'd be at the University of wherever.
UA Little Rock.
Wherever you right at a university, preferably Little Rock. But he wanted to learn how to weld.
Yep.
And so that, welding's not the only thing. When you look at the healthcare side of these pathways, the IT side of these pathways, the business side of these pathways, all of a sudden you're giving young people a reason to want to understand why geometry matters, to want to understand why science matters. And before, page 154 of the McGraw-Hill textbook meant nothing to them. But when they have the opportunity to understand right angles and see that they can weld a right angle and make sure that that works and it's at the right angle, no pun intended, but then take it to their very next class that's science and test the validity of that weld. Now, all of a sudden, those things that they never thought they'd ever use matter. And that's when the light bulb comes on. That's when they begin to learn. And it could be with a computer. It could be with any host of things. But if it's just the way we learned, no offense, I'm old. I shouldn't say we. You're not that old.
I'm old.
But if it's just the way we learned, Kids don't learn that way anymore.
They're so tactile. And the other part about it is the viability of those jobs. And that's what I was going to come back to when you started talking about that, because this is our workforce that you're talking about. They're going to grow into a portion of the economy and the ecosystem of the state of Arkansas, but particularly Little Rock. These kids are going to grow up and be able to have the kind of jobs and trades that will not be replaceable by all of the technology. The other part of it is I'm looking at all the pathways through what you're mentioning. The pathways are directly correlated with jobs that are viable. And we need those kind of people in our economy in order to grow Little Rock and then to grow the state. And so I'm really excited to hear that, because I personally, like, spoiler alert, didn't get a college degree until the Licensing and Certification Board of the state of Arkansas decided that appraisers needed a college degree. So then I went and got it. And 2 months later, they took the regulation away. So thank you for the certification board accidentally graduating me from college. However, it was a trade. I started in that trade straight out of high school, and it changed the entire path of my life. And the ecosystem of Little Rock, the way that people can grow a business, the way that they can get started from the ground up and move, for me, would have never happened without going into the trades.
You know, and people don't, again, that's not the only thing, but people don't often stop to think, how did somebody like Middleton Heat and Air start? It wasn't Chuck Middleton coming in and creating a conglomerate. It was Chuck Middleton starting out as an HVAC technician and then deciding, hey, I can do this myself, and I can own my own company, and I can be my own boss, and then I can hire other people like me. So we talk about the trade when we don't often take into account what business that typically leads to down the road. And so that's why it's important, in my opinion anyway, to have as well-rounded of an education as possible. And like yourself, have the ability to go back in bite-sized opportunities to get whatever certification or whatever skill that you need to go to that next level. And speaking of UA Little Rock, my hat's off to them, because they've figured that out. And they are now doing not only the traditional 4-year degree route scenario, or the commuter student who's coming in at night or on the weekends or whatever because they're working full time, but they're also giving people an opportunity to take 6, 9, 12-week courses so that they're able to learn from that and then earn from that.
I like that. I'm going to learn from, I like that. Good job. The other part is that's another direct correlation to our economy is the graduates there from UA Little Rock. So I love that we're plugging them quite a bit. And this is the dangerous part of getting into a conversation with me, because when you started talking about all these different trades and all these opportunities, it made me think about trading spaces, which is my idea that I think we should take any building that needs to be renovated and we should let a small business, like, imagine that you're Middleton and you're a guy who wants to start your own business. You just have to office out of the place that you fix up, for a certain term. And then you get your plumbing, your electrical, your HVAC, your roofing. You get all these little small businesses in there. The building gets repaired. So the landlord's pumped. The guy gets to grow his business and train his staff. And then you just move to the next building. And then each building gets built. So
that's a great idea.
Good, right? So let's do it. So I'm just on record, trading spaces came from right here.
Exactly.
And that's what we're going to do.
Don't anyone take that idea.
No, they can't. Okay, yeah, we copyrighted it, whatever. Trademark. I don't know. But anyways, so all that being said, you've been leading the chamber. Like when I say looking back, it's like you've been leading the chamber for a long time. And so you've seen changes of Little Rock from, is it 20, 22, 20?
2005, 20 years.
20 years. Okay. So the anniversary, congratulations.
Thank you.
Do you remember what month?
February 14th.
Okay, so we're past 20 years. We're almost at 21. Valentine's Day.
Yes.
That's where the love Little Rock came from. That's where this came from.
My very first day was Valentine's Day.
Okay, so that's where this came from then. We're gonna pin it. We're pinning it. That's when you fell in love with Little Rock. So you've seen it all. I mean, what does it look like compared to where you started and where you are now? In terms of how active the chamber is in the changes in the community and what comes to the city and how involved you are in that process.
And again, we often focus on the new things, the new company, the new jobs, when in reality for a community or a region to grow, it literally takes taking what you already have and helping it grow first. And so when you look at what we've done from the perspective of growth, 60 to 80% of the new jobs created in any geographic area come from existing industry expanding, which is why a young man named Jared Wycliffe on our team makes over 300 visits a year to businesses, small, medium, and large, in this area, trying to find out what issues, what pain points they have that we can do something about and make better. Because if we do that for them, it's going to impact a whole host of others. And so, I remember, Jamie, coming here when the population of Little Rock was shrinking, when the population of Pulaski County was barely holding it on its own, when surrounding counties, and rightfully so, were growing significantly. And when we started talking about how do you change that, it's not one thing. It's really not two or three things. It's a whole host of things. And to see the work, not only in economic development, but in public education, in infrastructure development, in park development, to see those things now actually come into fruition. And when we look at things from the metropolitan statistical area, or what we call the MSA. And when you see now we have 61,000 more people working today than we did in 2005 in this MSA, our GDP growth has doubled. We have 123, not quite 124,000 people here now than we did in 2005 from the standpoint of the region. And so I juxtapose that. I worked a big word in there. I juxtapose that to the fact that we do a whole lot of labor analytics, both for existing companies as well as obviously trying to locate new companies. And one of the things that we always do on a consistent basis is a zip code analysis of different industries. Our most recent zip code analysis was in the advanced manufacturing space. We only asked the companies in the port and at the airport to participate. So you're looking at a little over 10,000 jobs, actually more now. But in that zip code analysis, what we're trying to learn is, where are these people coming from? How far away are they coming from? Mm-hmm. And then what do we look at from a labor shed standpoint, not only to increase the amount of talent that already exists here, but then attract more to it. And, I can recall when we did that a few years back, in fact, it was about 7 years back, where we saw 26 different counties represented in that type of zip code analysis. And yet here we are a few short years later, and in this year's 48 different counties.
That's nice.
There's only 75 in Arkansas.
We got the majority.
48 different counties have people coming from there to work here. Mm-hmm. That's good news, because we're providing opportunity for people to work here, and our infrastructure work continues to allow the ease of transportation mm-hmm. to and from for those people to live where they want to live and work here. But it also calls attention to the fact that we have to do a better job of lifestyle and quality of life in the core of the region to give these people a reason to live here.
Stay.
Whether they're moving from, and which in all likelihood is not going to happen, from some smaller community, on the outskirts of the region, they're probably not going to move here. But what about that Jay or Jamie that's looking at a position here, deciding where they want to live? We have to give them every reason to choose this community, this core of the region, because that's how we're going to continue that growth. Sooner or later, you get past the point of having effectiveness when that concentric circle gets larger and larger. Mm-hmm. And then when that happens, your traffic gets bigger and bigger, which then begins to choke that growth. And so I didn't mean to run down that rabbit hole, but those are the things that we think about every day. For example, we started the Entrepreneurial Operating System, EOS.
No way. I'm so familiar with this. The whole data sheet,
Yes.
the only problem I have with that, Jay, is you have a very short welcome intro to that meeting. You're talking 5 minutes, and then you have your good and your bad for the week. I'm fully equipped to talk EOS with you, and it's how we grab traction. I know there's a whole book. And shout out to Cooper Richardson, who's the local EOS implementer. But at the same time, like, that is a very rigorous way to run a business. And what I also think is very cool is being entrepreneurial operating system. It doesn't matter if you're in an organization, running an organization, or you're just doing your own thing. That system works. So tell me where that came in.
So in 2023, we implemented it here. I had some counterparts and peers across the country that had done it where they are and were being very successful. And it's, in any business, it's difficult to keep people in the loop from a communication standpoint. It's really hard here. And so we started it. And as you know, as you're setting those goals, one of the things that framework requires you to do is to set a 10-year goal. Mm-hmm. And so if you're a chamber of commerce and an economic development organization, what 10-year goal really will be meaningful in the terms of making everything grow. And we thought and came up with the premise that if in 2023 there were 350,000 people working in the MSA, if 10 years from that, or 2033, we had 400,000 people working in the MSA, then that would impact everything. More small businesses, growth in communities, better schools, on and on and on, because that rising tide of that many more people working here would lift all boats, or in hopes lift all boats. And so we created that as our 10-year goal, fully expecting that, it was going to be a difficult stretch to get there.
Not when you use that. Here's the thing about that system. You can set a lofty goal 10 years out, but since you back it with a 5 and a 3 and a 1, you have these very clear outlines of when I hit this level, then I know what's next. And it makes it very difficult not to stay accountable to the goal, particularly because it's a kind of a call out system too. It's like hey, are you there yet? And it's across the whole entire organization. So everyone has a part to play and they know what that part is and they're fully geared towards it. And that kind of brings me to the whole idea of the way a chamber works within, because you've got all these accomplishments and great things and plans that you're moving ahead and building the region. But you also have this, like, you're in an ecosystem too, which I don't know why that's my word today. You can be juxtaposed. I'll be ecosystem. The thing is, you're working alongside of the city. You're working with the convention bureau. Likely you're probably having quite a bit of involvement with the AEDC, and you guys all have like a certain set of goals. But I'm curious, like, how does that collaboration work with respect to what your goals are? And like, is there collaboration amongst the 4 organizations to reach those goals together? And then as a subsequent point, with respect to like messaging and branding, everyone has a different purpose of what their organization does. But how does that messaging, like, what is the strategy behind the messaging being slightly different with each of those organizations as it's exposed outward nationally?
So, first of all, before we leave the EOS thing and that 400,000 person goal, working in the MSA, just 3 weeks ago, we announced yet another new record of over 380,000 people now working in the MSA. And in an interview with another person in the media last week, they asked, what's happened in the last few years that we're now seeing that? And as I smiled, I said, it's what we started 20 years ago to get to this point so that everything begins to work within itself, and then connectivity to other entities so that together we're bigger, together we're better than we ever were as individual entities trying to do our own thing. And so when you look at the messaging piece, my great friends at the Convention and Visitors Bureau, Gina Gimberling's doing a phenomenal job.
She's coming up on the podcast.
And they had a big On Little Rock campaign, and that's great because if you go back to our Love Little Rock, which started the Amazon craze.
It was also in 2023, wasn't it?
No, it was actually Love Little Rock was 2017.
And then it was like, I guess it was like reinvigorated or
we
something.
did the talent attraction,
okay.
the Love Little Rock Love Connection,
and as
at 23.
Yeah,
yes.
I was talent recruiting at the time and doing the PR piece for one of your major people here, startups. And at that time, I remember coming and having the big lit up letters and the love connection and all those things. So anywho, continue.
So it's, everyone has maybe a slightly different take on the messaging, but what we do with our marketing at the regional and national level helps Gina and her team, and what they do significantly helps us as well. And so we're literally taking that Love Little Rock to the next level. Gina and her team are looking at using that specifically for some other things in addition to the big on Little Rock. And so it's literally, it's about having that message heard. And, I can't quote the person who supposedly did the research to determine this to be true, but I'm told you have to hear something 8 times before it really begins to sink in. And so if we started the Love Little Rock campaign telling Amazon in 2017, we're not right for the HQ2 because we don't have the things that you're going to require for that, but here's what we are right for. And interestingly enough, here we are in 2025 and they're finishing the 6 million square feet of new construction that they have built here in Little Rock since that moment in time. And the thousands of employees will, because of the success of that campaign, and it was, my hat's off to Stone Ward and others that were a big part of that. Millie and her group led that. But what that did was create something across the country that now people know. And whether it's big on Little Rock or Love Little Rock, and when we say Little Rock, it's this whole area. It's not just one city. It's not just one community. It's this region. And so now when we say that, people smile and go, oh yeah, I know where that is. I remember X or I remember Y. I remember when you flew the plane, the beach plane over Seattle with the banner behind it saying, hey, Amazon, it's not you, it's us, love Little Rock. I remember the full page ad in the Washington Post that morning that started that whole campaign. I also remember being called maybe the dumbest guy in the world for the first few hours, but then Fortune magazine or Fortune through their digital channel, a little afternoon that day said it was the most brilliant campaign of the 238 communities who said they wanted Amazon, that here was this community who knew that they didn't have what they wanted.
Under promise, over deliver.
But then used that as a way to tell them and a whole host of others what was right here. And so taking that messaging from a state standpoint, we're working with the state, with Northwest Arkansas and others on talent attraction. And again, it's about helping people understand what it's like to live here, but then putting a face and a voice as opposed to a piece of paper or a video with that individual who's interested in coming and having success. I met with a gentleman yesterday who moved here from Portland 18 months ago. And he said, I'm going to be honest with you, I thought I'd hate it.
People, I don't know why there's that. And that comes back to the messaging is the whole Love Little Rock idea. Okay, great. Let's pull in the city and pull in the convention bureau and link up on that if that's what's working. Because
and
what's
the state.
really, and the state, because one of the things, which I think the state might be like, well, we have other cities. But the thing is that makes me, what you just said is people sometimes have to come here to fall in love. And I know for me, like, I hate to admit it, but I wasn't born and raised in Little Rock. I was born and raised in Southern California. And if I'm being fully transparent, when my parents told me we're moving to Arkansas, I said, oh, no. I'm not moving to Arkansas. I just graduated high school. My whole life is ahead of me. I'm not going there. And they said, we're going. And I actually did the whole, like, I'm going to move to Vegas if you move to Arkansas. And then they moved here. So I had to move there. Anyways, long story short, I end up in Arkansas. I've been here 18 years. I love living in Little Rock. My kids' schools are great. They're close by the house. I can run downtown to the metro area and hang out and enjoy myself. I can go to the college campus and watch a basketball at Jack Stevens Center of all places. We're very fortunate to have them here. I can go out west to different restaurants. I can go to Southwest and experience things like Plaza Frida. I can enjoy all these different things in my city, but I wouldn't know that if I wasn't exposed to all of the different opportunities that are available. And I think sometimes narratives get shifted across the country about statistics, as you mentioned, and they can be negative statistics, and they're easier to be attracted to than positive ones, because in our nature, I think, just as people, it's easier to spot that than it is to spot all the wonderful good things going on. So I'm curious, a couple things with what he said is, one, why did he come here? And two, what does he love the most about being here now that he's here? Like, how do we capitalize on his experience and sell it?
So it's interesting. He came here for a job and really thought that he would only be here for a little bit and then would leave. He's from the Pacific Northwest, much like you were talking about being from Southern California. Got here and loved it. Absolutely loved it. And so we sometimes get into the rut of thinking that outside the environs of Arkansas, people think badly of us, when in reality, they're just not thinking of us. Mm-hmm. Unless we give them a reason to think bad of us.
Like telling Amazon what we told them.
And, well, but at the same time,
like that.
At the same time, when we ran that campaign, we were trying to be witty. We were trying to show them that, hey, we wanted them, but we wouldn't be effective for that specific project. Obviously, it worked, 6 million square feet and thousands of people later. But what it also did was change the image of a negative Little Rock into a positive Little Rock. And everything that we can do to impact that and to continue that in connection with the Convention and Visitors Bureau, with the city, with the county. The county plays a big role in the work that we do as well. And then obviously with our partners at the state. You know, the one thing that we always hear from folks that decide to locate their business is when they come here, they see a team. And they can't tell you who works for who, because the team works so well together. Utilities, city, chamber, state, county, whatever it may be. And yet when they go to other places, they don't see that. And so that becomes a reason why they want to be here, because they recognize that we don't have to get on a plane and fly somewhere to ask somebody permission to do something. Oftentimes we either pick up the cell phone or we walk down the street.
That's really, I mean, it's pretty easy.
And what's interesting, you know, we really haven't paid attention to this as well as I think we should. You look at our congressional delegation, every single one of them hold a gavel. Every single one of them. So calling somebody and getting something done, whether it be at the local level, the county level, the state level, or the federal level, being a small state isn't a bad thing. Mm-hmm. It can actually be used to our advantage, which we try to do often.
Well, and what it made me think of, and I don't know why it's coming out left field, probably because we were talking about Texas earlier, but one of the things I recognize is, like, people always call this a small town, which is supposed to be a big city. And it's true, because you drive around town, and we were talking about this earlier, you attend events or you go places and you always know somebody in the room. Mm-hmm. It's very difficult to go 10 steps in Little Rock without running into a friend or foe. But when you're talking about being a small town, a big city, there's got to be a goal, or maybe there's not, like, of being this great, like, way bigger, giant capital city. And I think for me, there's like, okay, that would be great, but also, I kind of like the way things are. And I know when Austin had that big blow up, when a tech came to Austin, the infrastructure wasn't prepared. There wasn't the opportunity to come in at an affordable level and get a house after the first 3 months of that boom. Like, things got insane really fast, and it changed the landscape of their future. Great. But there were a lot of problems based on rapid growth really quickly that they were not expecting. So my curiosity there is like, okay, if these campaigns are wildly successful and all of a sudden we have thousands and thousands of people moving here, are we prepared for that right now? Or do we need to, what do we need to do in order to be prepared?
You know, it's interesting. You look out the window here at the I-30 corridor.
That thing is
the brand new bridge, mm-hmm. the infrastructure that's there, the largest project in the history of the state, over $1 billion. In 2010, people looked at us like we were almost half crazy when we started talking about the possibility of doing that. And what people didn't know at the time was there'd been so many barge hits of bridges that we had structural issues that needed to be dealt with, number one. But then number two, we also realized that Little Rock alone, or North Little Rock alone, or for that matter, Little Rock and North Little Rock alone, could never afford that type of project. And so we had the opportunity to work with the State Department of Transportation,
RDOT,
help them with a sales tax campaign, understanding that if this passed, this project would be a centerpiece for what they would build. Well, all of the angst that we went through in the design, in the community involvement, all those things that you need to do, you have to do it because you make better decisions when you do that. All of those folks who said we didn't need it, now I'm not going to say that they believe that we do, but I think now they're at least
see it
at peace and happy, because what was a bottleneck here? Talking about infrastructure.
Trying to get to soccer practice on
What
Thursday
was a
afternoon at
bottleneck
5.
here is no longer a bottleneck
Right.
here. And that's why 440 is so important. That's why 430 is so important. It's not necessarily to get people through here. It's people having the opportunity to get around here. And if we stay on top of that and in front of it from an infrastructure standpoint, I don't want to become that next booming city that wasn't prepared for what they were getting.
No offense,
because
Austin, but
in the end, that's not, it's good for some people, don't get me wrong, but it becomes a place that people don't want to live in, because if you're having to drive for an hour to go 20 miles, then life's too short.
And there's also that's a big thing when people come here. They're like, this is insane. We can get from place to place very quickly. And also from a national standpoint, people don't recognize this. And it's something that was very interesting to me to find out. But what a lot of people don't realize is we have rail, we have river, we have the largest, I think, intersection of transport, I think anywhere, right? But I'm not sure if that's, whoever said that. But
we are a logistical hub.
Yeah, and air. Forgot about air. That's a giant one. So, all these different ways we have to travel and all these different ways we have things to bring to Arkansas and send out of Arkansas. It's kind of wild to me that's I guess we should start sending everything that we send out of the state or out of Little Rock to just have the Love Little Rock, a tag on it. So when it arrives, they can go, oh, okay, that's where it's from.
It's interesting because I think this is important maybe to your audience. Direct flights.
Yeah.
Everybody wants more direct flights.
Let's go to, is it, it's Colorado. Where was it?
So there's now a direct flight to Denver.
That's what I thought.
There's now a direct flight to Salt Lake City. There's now another direct flight to Phoenix. But
who's the skier that set this up? That's what I want to know.
So this is where economic development helps when folks never really see it. So every night, American flies in several planes to do regularly scheduled maintenance. Well, those planes are coming in from all around their system. It's here in Abilene that does the majority of that work. So if you're American, would you rather take that plane and send it somewhere the next morning empty or full?
I would vouch for full. And also I have a list of places I would like them to consider on their next route. LaGuardia was a good choice.
If we're able to allow an expansion of that maintenance work to bring more planes in on a nightly basis, that maybe gives us a better opportunity for a new direct flight, because those planes have to go out and they're taking one out of the fleet here and one out of the fleet there. It's not like it's a one-off scenario. They're going to be coming back and forth to the same places. That's where and we're working on that project right now. That's where economic development literally impacts quality of life in ways that people just really they ever stop to think? Because there's no reason why they would. They wouldn't know that.
Well, and I didn't think about that just from I live here standpoint. I mean, I have two kids, one's in kindergarten, one's in senior year, smart decision. But with them, it's very difficult to think about where am I going to travel? When am I going to travel? How am I going to get there? Because I'm not thinking about what direct flights are here. Mm-hmm. And some people might not be, and some people might be. But what's really cool about it is, let's say I'm working, I live in Little Rock and my business is somewhere else. If I can direct flight get there, I'm more than likely going to stay in Little Rock and just work remotely and pop out to where I need to go and then come right back. So the more options we have, the better it is. And I completely agree, but it is an unseen thing to the public, which is why we do things like this and have the podcast, because that messaging needs to get out, particularly to my generation who are in there. Well, not me. No, I was about to say not me, because I'm what's considered an elder millennial, which is another word of saying you were alive when cell phones weren't and you were here to see AI come to life. Like, I have spanned the lifetime. But all of that being said, our generation and the workforce changed when COVID hit, and it changed big. And so there are people in the generation behind me that are used to coming into the workforce from a remote standpoint, which makes it to where they can live anywhere. So why not live in a city where you can pop from side to side easily, fly out to places that are fun? I mean, it makes a lot of sense to hang out in Little Rock, particularly when you're able to work remotely. You might as well live here. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a great opportunity, those direct flights, to make things work for those kind of people.
You know, I don't think, and I'd never really experienced it at this level until a handful of weeks ago. I was asked to come and speak at an event in Colorado, in Boulder, and I'm thinking to myself, this is a 2-day thing at a minimum. I don't really have 2 days. Great reason to go and good people to, all of that would have been wonderful. And then I got online and saw that I could leave Little Rock at 8:30 that morning, get to Denver, take an Uber to Boulder, do my thing in Boulder, get back in an Uber and come back to Denver, fly home from Denver, or from Denver to home, and be home at 9:00 that night. And I just thought,
what excuse are you going to have when they ask you to speak there and they say, hey, right. You're going to get in trouble with your constituents audience there.
And all of our airlines are doing phenomenal work. But that just, when you have the opportunity, to your point, when you're that connected, physically connected, not just through a phone or a Zoom or what have you, then it helps the whole economy grow.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm excited about that because I feel like for me, I mean, I want Little Rock to grow just as much as you do. And I'm sure the city does and all of that. My big focus, to be quite honest, is the strength of the university, the importance of particular areas that are under, development or trying to bring in more jobs and or more property development there to increase their opportunities, provide, upward mobility to students and to kids and stay in their good school. I mean, there's so many things, like you said, there are so many things to focus on. And it's really hard to, at least in my opinion, zero in on here's what we need to focus on now. And then let's move to this. And then let's move to this. So do you kind of follow the lead of the city there? Are you your own entity separate that's focusing on what you're focusing on? And it's mostly focused around a typical chamber, which is going to be the business. It's going to be the, all the things that bring small businesses the resources they need, big businesses, new location to expand and grow. How does that work with respect to their goals, your goals, the Convention Bureau's goal? I mean, they're looking for visitors. The city's looking for long-term growth. I think the chamber is too. Mm-hmm. But how does that work? I mean,
and you've heard me say this before. We're an economic development organization that just happens to be called a chamber, because what you'll find out there in the chamber world is they're all somewhat different, based upon what it is their community has or region has them there to do. And so to that point, when we decided that the only way to grow the port and have the opportunity for a 1,000-acre mega site was to move a VOR cone, which the FAA said they would never move. And we started that process in 2018. And literally in less than 6 weeks, that will actually finally be accomplished. And is interestingly enough, is the only time it took an act of Congress to get a project done. But we got that done. It took all this time. And so it's oftentimes we see potential and then we go with that collaboration perspective and say, mayor, county judge, governor, whomever the scenario may be, and in many cases, it's all of the above. If we go do this, then we can get that. The I-30 corridor is a perfect example of that. We knew we couldn't do it locally. We needed to have a regional group. Tab Townsell was then the mayor of Conway. I called Tab and said, would you help me with this? Because Conway needed 3 lanes from here to there that they didn't think they would ever be able to get by themselves. So everybody won from it, but it was because we all worked together. But somebody has to be that spark. Somebody has to take that lead, and it's not always us. But years ago, we ran a marketing program that basically stated, we do what most people think just happens.
That's cute.
And I'm blessed with an amazing creative team, and they come up with amazing, wonderful ideas, some not so practical, but amazing.
We're creators. We're dreamers, Jay. That's what we do.
Amazing, wonderful ideas every day. And yet the goal always is, how do we make this place better? Sometimes, and the Academies of Central Arkansas are a perfect example of this. We started the Ford Next Generation Learning Framework based upon what Nashville, Tennessee did with the Ford Motor Company. We actually started that work in 2018 as well. But our goal was to stand it up and get it operating and get it implemented in all 4 school districts in the Pulaski County, area, and then push it out to be its own thing. So a month and a half ago, the person we hired to help lead this years ago led that foundation out into its own office space and its own thing. And somebody had to get it to that point. And there's no one else in many cases that can or will do that unless you have a group of people waking up every day going, how are we going to make this better?
It's so funny that you just brought that to light, because now I'm flashing back to 2018 when I had that conversation on the podcast with Jim Cargill, and he started talking about talked about all of it. And I was like, ooh, this is a while out. And here we go. It's been a while out, but it's been completed. So really, I
want to say this because we were talking about growth a little bit earlier. Every high school in Pulaski County that has implemented Ford Next Generation Learning, that we call Academies of Central Arkansas, is growing. Every single one of them.
That's good news.
So if you provide young people and parents with the assurance that what their children are going to get is an opportunity not only to go to college and be better prepared, but also for those that decide they don't want to do that, to go into a career and be prepared as soon as they leave, to graduate with industry recognized certification, to graduate with college hours already completed. We spend an inordinate amount of time as a young person in school, and yet most people don't spend hardly any time in school their senior year.
Well, I can attest to that with my senior year high schooler here, who's, thank goodness. But
why don't we take advantage of that time while we can?
Yeah.
And it be free.
Well, and here's the other thing about that. And I really appreciate you saying that, because at the end of the day, I told my kids, the 5-year-old doesn't get it yet, but the 18-year-old, I told him when he was a freshman in high school, and he was like, where do you expect me to go to college? Like, that's not my expectation. I have 2 things I want from you: be healthy, be happy. And those 2 things, I think every parent wants the same 2 things for their kids, no matter what they choose to do. I want you healthy. I want you happy. That doesn't mean a 4-year degree all the time. It could be trades. It does. Oftentimes you cannot do what you want to do without a 4-year degree. So it's varied. And that's a huge, huge benefit to us that we have here. And I'm glad to know that every high school is growing. I'm also not
every high school that's implemented.
Yeah, well, that's true. Every high school that's implemented. Correction. Good thing we don't edit this. We really don't. So, okay, well, here's the deal. I could talk to you for 1 million hours, but we unfortunately don't have 1 million hours. So before we end this podcast, I want to talk about this book. And I want to first ask you, is this information available in sort of like this format on any sort of website, or do you need to come and get a physical copy? Or because this contains a lot of information that I want you to kind of just do a quick overview of what this was created for and what all it includes.
So every 3 years, our MetRock Forward, which is the Economic Development Division of the Chamber, does what I've always referred to as a capital campaign, but a lot of my leadership will laugh and say, "No, Jay, it's really an operations campaign because if we don't have the money, we can't do it." But that entails looking back at what we said our goals were for the last 3 years, then looking forward to what we would like to attain or achieve in the next 3 years, and a strategy to get there. You can actually go to our website. And for those folks that would like to do so, you can just go to the MetRock Forward tab of the website. You'll be able to see this plan. It talks about what our goals and results currently are for the 23 through 25.
With all the focus areas listed out very clearly.
And it also talks about some of the minute things that people don't really see that are really important to have a successful economic development program. And then after you get through that wonderful stuff that I have an amazing team that accomplishes, then you get to the 26 through 28. And that's where we're telling our investors, our contributors. And most people don't realize, if you're a member of the Chamber of Commerce, and we want everybody to be, none of those membership dollars actually funds economic development. We go out to chamber members and ask them to pay, to invest over and above what their actual dues are to help us fund economic development. And then we augment that with public contracts for services with the city, with the airport, with the city of Maumelle, and many others. And so to put that in perspective, we are in the midst of a campaign to raise $2 million a year. We're currently at a $1.7 million economic development budget. We're trying to move that to $2 million a year in this next campaign. About 70% of that are private dollars. Let me start that again. About 70% of that are private dollars, and 30% are the public contracts for services. We do that work for, again, a whole host of public entities. And when we do that, if anyone wants to come and see what that looks like from an audit perspective, we actually have a pull-out audit of just the Economic Development Fund that we can hand folks. Or you can go to the Form 990 and see that. I mean, there's plenty of ways to go see that. But we do this every 3 years because we want to create a strategy that's realistic. Mm-hmm. We used to do it every 5. And the world changes. The world changes way too soon. And so we're in the midst of that campaign right now, but it will actually, if you go and you look at this information, it'll talk about our 3 major focus areas, business attraction, retention, and expansion, which is kind of what we're known for from an economic development standpoint, but how we're going to build the brand, how we're going to market the region, how we're going to invest in additional sites and infrastructure. You know, I talked about Amazon a few minutes ago and the data center project that we announced that more information will be forthcoming. Those 2 projects are located on 800 acres that we did not own in January. Now, think about that. And so when you look at the amazing investment of the city, that alone, $30+ million in site development. If you don't have sites, if you don't have buildings, if you don't have a technology park and a place for people to come, then you can't do this.
If you build it, they will come, Jay. This is an old...
Kind of, sort of.
But that's an old,
right.
It's always tried and true.
So you see that part of our work, and we've already talked about existing industry and business and how important they are. Also, from a traction standpoint, there's some more information as to how we do that. The second focus area is entrepreneurship, technology, and innovation. Many folks probably don't realize the Little Rock Chamber, speaking of that spark, started work in February of 2025, shortly after I got here, that effectively created, or didn't effectively, it did create the Little Rock Technology Park. We led the campaign to raise the feasibility funding to see if we could do that, if it would be worthwhile. We then raised the funding to be able to actually run a public tax campaign. Part of that was to actually build the tech park itself. Part of it was to expand the port. And so again, entrepreneurship, technology, and innovation is how we will grow at a faster rate than just with one or two or three industries. We're blessed to be very diverse when it comes to both the people and industry here in Little Rock and Central Arkansas. So that's important to us as well. And then the third focus area is the talent development, recruitment, and retention stuff that we've already talked mostly about, but it's identifying talent gaps. You know, if you're Jamie Inc., what is it you're?
I'm actually Jamie Teller LLC, but I'll take it.
Okay, then what we want to know is what difficulty are you having in finding what talent, and then through what we were able to glean from the Little Rock Love Connection talent attraction campaign back in 23, we're communicating with thousands of people twice a month all over this country that had an interest in coming to Little Rock to work. And we're continuing to do that. And what we're trying to do is laser focus that marketing and that communication to people in those industries that we need because of the talent that they have that we want here. So you can see that entire that entire strategy, which includes an experienced Little Rock new plan from a talent attraction standpoint. I talked a few minutes ago as well about it can't just be a paper or a digital or a video relationship. It needs to be a person.
It needs to be experiential.
And so if Jamie comes on, this
I would crush it selling Little Rock.
If Jamie comes on and you're interested, then somebody needs to be talking with Jamie, as long as she's agreeing to it, talking with Jamie about what this place is like, answering questions. And then if that person chooses to visit, meeting that person, showing them some things. We're going to call them wayfinders or connectors. We're not really sure what we're going to call them.
We're just going to use, that's what we do with the block talk, is try to attract people to understand what's going on with the block as far as, so there's multitudes of ways to do it, but it's one of those things where if you don't understand, we talked about it earlier, if you don't know, then you don't know what you don't know until you know it.
And you vote no.
And yeah, exactly. So, well, with the lifestyle and livability portion too, you can see a lot of things that are in here that is upcoming, or that's going to be hopefully implemented based on the strategic initiatives. What I think is also really cool is, or actually challenging for your group, is that each one of these pages has its own EOS plan. They each have goals that are wildly optimistic and exciting and are stretching themselves pretty far. So you as a chamber are going to be stretched to meet these goals and really, really accept these challenges and pull people to the capital city.
And that goes back to the talent that we have here. And, we talked about the academies of Central Arkansas a few minutes ago. You can't create something and then set it out on its own and leave it as an orphan. So that's a great example of private business will continue to invest in the academies every single year, because it's more important, in my opinion, to have that private investment continue as it is for the public investment to come alongside, which is happening as we speak. So just because we started something and it's now been moved out, we're still engaged with it. Just because infrastructure is in a better place, maybe from a major corridor perspective than it was in 2020 or whatever the number is, we're still having to look at that. Mm-hmm. We're having to look at local city and county infrastructure. We're having to look at electrical capacity. We're having to look at water and wastewater capacity. We have literally in a bill as we sit here awaiting congressional approval from a budget standpoint that would give us the opportunity to build a $20 million workforce development center, but also a significant investment in our wastewater facility to allow for additional capacity. A lot of people don't realize.
Oh, it's a whole experience. It's a whole experience trying to do that.
Yep.
I do realize, but only at the level of residential subdivisions, but it's wild. So I can't imagine doing it at that large scale, but it's a lot of work. So you got your work cut out for you, but you've been having your work cut out for you for 25 years now. To do the math again on that.
20.
No, because it's
but
2025.
It's over 30.
2025. Yeah, so 20. Okay. Here's the thing about the 20s, okay? ever since I got an invitation to my 20-year high school reunion, I have refused to believe what year it is. I threw it in the trash, Jay. I didn't even think about going. No, it's not been 20 years. But so here's the thing. We have great conversations all the time, but this audience and those of you watching, listening, you need to go to the Little Rock Chamber's website and really look closely at what's going on here, what's going to be going on here. And you can always, the chamber's pretty easy to walk in and say hello to somebody and get engaged. And
everybody's welcome.
Especially if you have a small business too, coming in and getting, because you're talking about all these really big things, but also you guys are throwing Medweek events, you're having networking events, you have Create Little Rock, you have the Young Professionals Network, you have all these things going on, and people need to really take advantage of that, capitalize on the opportunity. So it's an iceberg. It is what you think a Chamber of Commerce does, and then it's everything that it does. So I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of dig into that with you. And again, I could talk to you for hours, which is why we have a good friendship here, and I admire the work you do. So I'm really grateful. And of course, the only other question I have to ask you is, like, you yourself. You're working a lot of hours. You're putting a lot of events on the table. We talked about it. How do you, like, and I know we're foodies here in Little Rock, so we have lots of cool restaurants. We have a lot of cool places to go. What is the thing you do when you want to unplug and you're just here at your home city?
So my most favorite thing to do is to actually train and compete with Labrador Retrievers. Mm-hmm. And so I do that not only here, but also across the country. And it's my release. It's my opportunity to go and just be me, typically in places with really bad cell coverage. So.
Oh, okay. Well, I think that's pretty relative in the sense that you're sending those dogs out to compete, run, track the prize, and come back. And you are essentially, for Little Rock, doing the same thing. We have trained you well, my friend.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for all of your time and for coming on the podcast. I know you're busy and I really appreciate it, but there is great opportunity in sharing the information about our city with the wider audience. So
Amen.
I wish I was the one who could be responsible for this, but I think we're going to come to the end of the episode by saying, thank you for watching. Love, Little Rock.
Amen. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay.